Welcome back to the Form.IO Getting Started series. In the last milestone, we set up authentication for our deployed developer portal. With your team onboarded and portal access ready, the next step in bringing your application to life is creating your first form. By the end of this milestone, you'll know how to build, secure, and embed your form into an application. In this video, we'll cover what are forms and submissions, how to build your first form, how to set up roles and permissions, how to embed your form into an application, and how to collect and review your submissions. Before we start, it's important to remember that the portal-based project is used to govern the behavior of the deployed portal application, not for building forms. Keeping your forms in a separate project ensures a clean separation between access management of the developer portal and your application development. Create a separate project for building your forms. We'll continue using this project throughout the rest of this series. In Form.IO, everything starts with a form, a JSON structure or template that defines what information you want to collect. Each form is made up of components such as text fields, dropdowns, checkboxes, and layouts that you can drag and drop using the form builder. Each component defines what kind of input it collects and how it behaves. For example, whether it's required, has default values, or includes custom validation or logic. Once your form is built, it becomes part of your Form.IO project, complete with programmatically generated API endpoints for creating, reading, updating, and deleting submissions. This means every form isn't just a visual interface, it's also a fully functional REST API your application can interact with. When a user fills and submits the form, Form.IO creates a submission, the structured JSON data captured during the form submission process. Submissions can be viewed, filtered, exported, or used to trigger automated workflows like sending emails or integrating with other systems' APIs. Together, forms and submissions form the foundation of your data workflow. The form defines the structure of the data you'll collect, and the submission represents the values of the data that's been collected according to that structure. Now that we know a little bit about forms and submissions, let's go back to the project we created earlier, head to the Form tab, and click the Create Form button. This opens the drag and drop form builder where we can name and start building our form. This interface is where you'll spend most of your time during the building and design process. Before we start adding components, let's take a quick look around. At the top is the form toolbar, where you can add actions, preview your forms, and access the submission table. We'll take a closer look at some of these settings later in the video. In the middle is your workspace, where you'll drag and arrange your components. On the left are component groups, organized by type. Click on any group to expand it and see the available components. We'll move quickly here through the main component groups, but feel free to pause for details or visit the help documentation for a deeper look at these components. The basic group includes common fields like text fields for basic text input, as well as value-based components like radio buttons and select dropdowns. The advanced group includes components with built-in inputs and validations such as email and phone number fields. It also offers more complex options like the date and time calendar picker. Next, the layout group. These include components that provide design flexibility, allowing you to add custom HTML and adding structure to your form using panels and columns. The data group manages structured or repeating data using containers, data grids, or edit grids. Finally, the premium group unlocks enterprise features like external data sources, file uploads, nested forms, CAPTCHA security, and interactive tools like the TagPad and Sketchpad. With these groups in mind, you can combine and configure components to match almost any data collection need. Now that we understand the components, let's build a simple employee expense report form that authenticated users can fill out within the application. Building a form is simple. Just drag and drop components onto the workspace and arrange them in the order you want. Each component can be configured by clicking the settings icon. Try following along in your own project as we walk through these next steps. Start by adding a panel from the layout group and name it Employee Information. Inside the panel, add a text field for the employee's name. Add an email field for automatic email validation, and then a select component for selecting the employee's department. Next, create a second panel titled Expense Details. Inside, add a date-time field for the expense date, a select component for the expense type, a currency component for the expense amount, a text area for expense description, and then finally a checkbox for the employee to opt in to receive a copy of their expense report. Now let's configure a few fields to provide clear guidance to our users and ensure the data collected is accurate and reliable. Start by clicking the settings icon for the name field. We'll update the label and placeholder text and set the field to be required. For the email field, we'll add a placeholder text and also enable the required flag. Edit the department field and add some value options for the available departments. For the date field, I'll disable the time input, adjust the formatting, and use some Moment.js to prevent selecting future dates. We'll edit the text area component and switch this to a WYSIWYG editor for richer formatting. And then finally, we'll set the default value to checked for our checkbox component. This form is fairly simple, but keep in mind Form.IO supports building highly dynamic, data-driven forms. You can connect to external data sources, apply conditional logic to show or hide fields based on user input, and even automate workflows that respond to submission data. Form.IO is a platform for building and managing the forms that power your application. While you can view and interact with them in the developer portal, these forms are ultimately meant to be embedded into your own app. Before embedding, however, it's a good idea to test and preview your form to make sure everything works as expected, from field validation to conditional logic. The Use tab provides a convenient space to do just that before integration. Try saving your form and switching to Use mode to test validation. With the form configured, the next step is to set up roles and permissions, the foundation of Form.IO's access control system that work together to control who can access your forms and what actions they can perform. Roles define groups of users in your application that are assigned after authentication. Think of roles as the who in access control. Some common default Form.IO roles are anonymous, anyone who's not logged in, authenticated, logged in users, and administrator, users with full control over the form and submission data. Since we already configured authentication in the Milestone 2 video, we can now build on that foundation to define who can access this form and what actions they can take. If you haven't seen that video yet, you may want to check it out before continuing here. Let's start our access setup by ensuring we have a user created within our user resource. Every user created within this resource will receive the authenticated role via the role assignment action. This account will be used for authenticating into our application. Once roles are defined, we'll set up permissions to control what actions each role can perform. Permissions apply to forms, resources, and the submission data associated with them. Permissions define what each role can do with your forms and data. Key permission types include create, defines whether the role can fill out and submit the form. Read, determines whether the role can view the form or its submission data. Update, controls whether the role can modify existing submission data. And delete, determines whether the role can remove the submission data. Together, roles and permissions ensure your form and submission data are both accessible to your application user groups and secure. To configure permissions, open the Access tab of your form and start by adding the authenticated role to the read form definition, which will allow the authenticated user to view the form within the context of the application. Next, add the authenticated role to the create own permission, which will allow the user to fill out and submit the form within the app. We'll expand on these permissions later in the video. Now that our form is ready, it's time to embed it into our application. Embedding a form is simple. Each form generates a unique embed URL that is used to integrate your forms into your app. You can include this endpoint directly in your HTML or load it dynamically using the Form.IO JavaScript SDK, compatible with frameworks like Angular and React. For this example, we'll use a simple React-based expense report application to demonstrate the embedding process. Open the Embed tab of your form, select your application's framework type, and copy the provided embed snippet. Paste this snippet into your application's code. Its placement will depend on your application's structure and framework type. Once embedded, the form is fully interactive, giving you flexibility to adjust styling or add event handlers so it fits smoothly into your application's workflow. Submissions go directly into your Form.IO project and connected database. With everything set up, render the form in your application. Log in using the credentials we set up earlier, and submit the form. When a submission occurs, Form.IO automatically generates a unique ID given to the submission that is saved in the submission JSON. Because we enabled the Create Own Submission permission for our form, Form.IO assigns ownership of that submission to the authenticated user who filled out the form. This is possible because every user in Form.IO has a unique user ID associated with their account. When the form is submitted, that unique user ID is included in the submission JSON as the owner, establishing a direct link between the user and the specific submission record. This ownership relationship is what enables Form.IO to recognize which submissions belong to a specific user, so the system can correctly enforce permissions like read, update, and delete. Each submission is connected to the form and can be viewed, searched, filtered, or exported from the Data tab of your form within the Form.IO project and your connected database. The structured JSON submission data not only enables user ownership and permissions to take place, but simplifies integrations with APIs, workflows, and external systems. This structure keeps all collected data organized, secure, and easily accessible for reporting or application logic. Now that the form is connected to the submission's owner, we can extend those permissions further. As mentioned earlier, roles can be configured not only to create submissions, but also to view, edit, and delete them. Let's go back to the Access tab of our form to further refine the form's permissions. For example, adding the authenticated role to the read-only permission allows the user to view their submission. The update own allows the user to edit their own submission. And the delete own allows the user to remove their submission. When a user sends an API request for one of these actions, Form.IO checks that the user has the appropriate role and that their user ID matches the owner ID of the submission before allowing the action to take place. Congratulations! You've built your first Form.IO form and gained a clear understanding of how forms and submissions work. You've learned how to customize and organize your fields, set up roles and permissions, embed your form into an application, and collect and review submissions, all while keeping your data secure and properly managed. Remember, at the heart of this process are forms and submissions. The form defines the structure of the data you want to collect, and each submission captures the values entered by the user. With this foundation in place, you're ready to start leveraging Form.IO to collect, manage, and act on your application data, a key milestone in your Form.IO journey. Now, we've built a simple form, but what if your form needs to collect files, send submission data via email, maybe push it to another system using a webhook? In the next video, we'll explore actions and integrations and how to interact with the rest of your technology stack with Form.IO. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing to the channel and share with your team for more Form.IO content. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos in the Form.IO Getting Started series.